Shalom. All praise to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakar Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone that rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Alright, now, I just did a video on kingdom being divided against itself. Alright, then I go to the New York Times app, and I see this article, The Looming Contest Between Two Presidents and Two Americas, which further goes to show the division in America, man. And it started at the top, whatever that's why they got terms like the head of the body, head of the snake. The people are always going to be a reflection of the leadership, just like, the point I made in the last video, that the children are a reflection of the parents, man. All you are is what your leadership is, But getting into the article, the general election matchup that seems likely between President Biden and former President Donald J. Trump is about fundamentally disparate visions of the nation. It says each of them has sat behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office, signed bills into law, and appointed judges, bartered with foreign leaders, and ordered the armed forces into combat. They both know what it is like to be the most powerful person on the planet. Excuse me. Yet the general election matchup that seems likely after this week's New Hampshire primary represents more than the first in a century contest between two men who have both lived in the White House. It represents the clash of two presidents of profoundly different countries. The president of Blue America versus the president of Red America. And don't let these, tricky terms that these people use in these articles fool you. America ain't no damn different, no matter who's in charge. It's the same shit. All right. It says the looming showdown between President Biden and former President Donald J. Trump, assuming Nikki Haley cannot pull off a Hail Mary surprise, which she won't, goes beyond the binary liberal-conservative split of two political parties familiar to generations of Americans. It is at least partly about ideology. See, that goes into the division. You have two opposing sides with two different ideals or ideology. You bound to cause chaos just by that statement. All right, that's how you know this place is done, man. It says it is at least partly about ideology, yes, but also fundamentally about race and religion and culture and economics and democracy and retribution, and most of all, perhaps, about identity. Now, when you look at these words that's used, those are all divisive words. Race, divisive. Religion, divisive. Divides people, man. Culture and economics divides people, all right? How culture is used in America is a specific thing that people do, right? So if you have all these different nations in America, everybody's culture is different. So once again, that's division. We know economics is division. That's why you got the upper class, middle class, lower class type capitalistic system in America, and democracy, which is what this government is so-called ran on, all right? And that's divisive, Even giving people the idea that they have this many choices is divisive, or it's going to bring division, all right? And retribution, which is just synonymous with revenge. This is one side against another, all right? This place is divided against itself, all right? It says, and most of all, perhaps about identity, it is about two vastly disparate. I got it, Salakia. I gotta look this word up. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, so like it should bother me. Disparate. Markedly distinct in quality or character, containing or made up of fundamentally different and often incongruous elements. So that's another word that's, basically describing division, right? Incongruous, lacking congruity, such as not harmonious, all right, not conforming, disagreeing, lacking propriety. All right, so basically just disparate, I can't even pronounce it, so like, but a word that describes division as well. All right, it is about two vastly disparate visions of America led by two presidents who, other than their age and the most recent entry on their resumes, could hardly be more dissimilar. Mr. Biden leads an America that, as he sees it, embraces diversity, democratic institutions, and traditional norms, that considers government at its best to be a force for good in society. Mr. Trump leads an America where, in his view, the system has been corrupted by dark conspiracies and the undeserving are favored over hardworking everyday people. It says deep visions in the United States are not new. Indeed, they can be traced back to the Constitutional Convention in the days of John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson. The place has been divided from the start. But according to some scholars, they have rarely reached the level seen today when red and blue Americas are moving further and further apart geographically, philosophically, financially, educationally, and informationally. All right, so once again, these words are just describing division. All right, Americans do not just disagree with each other, they live in different realities, each with its own self-reinforcing internet and media ecosphere. The January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol was either an outrageous insurrection in service of an unconstitutional power grab by a proto-fascist or a legitimate protest that may have gotten out of hand but has been exploited by the other side and turned patriots into hostages. The two lands have radically different laws on the access to abortion and guns. More division. The partisan breakdown is so cemented in 44 states that they effectively already sit in one America or the other when it comes to the fall election. That means they will barely see one of the candidates, who will focus mainly on 6 battleground states that will decide the presidency. In an increasingly tribal society division, Americans describe their differences more personally. Since Mr. Trump's election in 2016, according to the Pew Research Center, the share of Democrats who see Republicans as immoral has grown from 35% to 63%, while 72% of Republicans say the same about Democrats, up from 47%. In 1960, about 4% of Americans said they would be displeased if their child married someone from the other party. By 2020, that had grown to nearly 4 in 10. Indeed, only about 4% of all marriages today are between Republican and Democrat. It says today, when we think about America, we make the essential error of imagining it as a single nation. All right, single nation meaning what? Being unified, right? So it just further speaks to the division of this kingdom. It says a marble mixed of red and blue people. Michael Podhorzer, a former political director of the AFL-CIO, wrote in an essay last month. But America has never been one nation. We are a federate republic of two nations, red nation and blue nation. This is not a metaphor. It is a geographic and historical reality. Just like if you've ever paid attention to the election at any point, and they show that map of America, you got red states, blue states. So he's correct about that. The current divide reflects the most significant political realignment since Republicans captured the South and Democrats the North following the civil rights legislation of the 1960s. Mr. Trump has transformed the GOP into the party of the white working class, rooted strongly in rural communities and resentful of globalization, while Mr. Biden's Democrats have increasingly become the party of the more highly educated and economically better off, who have thrived in the information age. Trump was not the cause of this realignment, since it has been building since the early 1990s, said Douglas B. Sosnick, who was a White House counselor to President Bill Clinton and studies political trends. But his victory in 2016 as his presidency accelerated these trends, and this realignment is largely based on the winners and losers in the new 21st century digital economy, and the best predictor of whether you are a winner or a loser is your level of education. Each of the leaders of these two Americas wields power in his own way. As the current occupant of the White House, Mr. Biden has all the advantages and disadvantages of incumbency, but Mr. Trump has been acting as an incumbent in a fashion too. He never conceded his 2020 defeat, and the majority of his supporters, polls show, believe that he, not Mr. Biden, is the legitimate president. Even without a formal office, Mr. Trump has set the agenda up for Republicans in Washington and the state capitals. He encouraged the internal coup that took down Speaker Kevin McCarthy last year after he made a spending deal with Mr. Biden. He is advising the current Speaker, Mike Johnson, on how to handle the impasse over border policy and security and aid for Ukraine. Many elected Republicans who once stood against Mr. Trump with notable expectations have rushed to endorse him in recent weeks as his claim to the party's presidential nomination has grown almost complete. As a result, it is hard to imagine any major policy deal coming together in Washington this year without Mr. Trump's approval, or at least his acquiescence. Pardon me. The current situation has no exact analog in American history. Only twice before have two presidents faced off against each other. In 1892, former President Grover Cleveland won a rematch against President Benjamin Harris. In 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt lost a third-party bid to dispose his successor and estranged protege, William Howard Taft, but paved the way for victory by the Democratic candidate Woodrow Wilson. And this article continues to go on. I'm not going to read the whole article, but if you want to check it out, the looming contest between two presidents and two Americas. All right, and this article is a pretty long article, but it goes in depth about the division, all right, in America, starting at, what's considered the top, and, that being the government, all right. But I hope that video was edifying. Shalom.